No! Sisterにならない。
もうそんなんじゃほら心は進化するよもっともっと。
Sup there, Weeb Squad? It's Evan, otherwise known as the Insane Otaku here. This glorious Monday, I am looking at an infamous shonen anime, otherwise known as Black Clover. This anime is so hated, so derivative, so generic, but is that all still true? Back in October 2017, this show began to air as the new big shonen anime. Crunchyroll, Studio Pierrot, Viz Media, Funimation, TV Tokyo, and among other companies were all pushing it to get very popular. The heavy push of marketing led it to come into the spotlight before it even aired. However, things were still looking shaky, even before the first episode started. Lots of negative press existed around the manga for quite a while at that point. Actually, in July of 2016 at Comic-Con International, it was voted the worst manga of the year. In fact, this is actually originally how I found out about the show, through this post. My curiosity was piqued by this, and I was ironically anticipating Black Clover. To say the least, I was not disappointed. Episode 1 of Black Clover may be one of the worst first episodes ever made. Its pacing is snail slow, Asta's voice, well... and the plot was a near perfect copy of Naruto. Seriously, it starts with a boy who's weak in this world, an edgy and older rival who happens to have jet black hair. And to become strong, Asta has to awaken the power of a demon within him. Even the backstory for the first Wizard King is eerily similar to the backstory regarding the fourth Hokage dealing with the Nine-Tails. All of these elements led to an extremely negative reception by the community and by the press early on, and it's probably something that the show will never recover from. The big problem with the series was expectation. Everyone, including the companies backing it, wanted it to be the next Naruto, and what we got was exactly that, but not in the way that anybody wanted. We didn't want Naruto with magic instead of jutsu. We wanted a new shonen that could blow us away and give us interesting fight scenes and quality. So now, as of recording, Black Clover has aired 41 of its proposed 51 episodes, so it's very close to the end, although we all know there's probably going to be a season 2. But the real question is this: has it improved? Short answer, yes. Many of the issues that plagued the series early on have subsided considerably. Art and animation is certainly the easiest to pick out. Earlier episodes in the series had a lot of slightly off-model characters that were very distracting for a lot of reasons. This showed little care and effort when it came to displaying the show. Even by Studio Pierrot standards, it was very low quality. In fact, I would argue that it looks probably almost nowhere near acceptable for some of the episodes. Recently, it has become evident that effort has actually been put into the show. Still frames are far less present, animation consistency has also been improved. All this makes the show much easier to watch, and I would go as far as to say as it looks fine for the most part now. Asta himself has also seen an extreme boost in his voice talent. Gakuto Kajiwara was a first-time voice actor when he played Asta when the show began. Why they chose someone with actually literally no experience voice acting to play their lead character in their new big shonen series is completely beyond me and makes no sense. Regardless, the fact that he was unexperienced seemed unforgettably present in the first 13 episodes or so. He proved himself to have absolutely no range whatsoever. He just reverted back to the exact same thing he was doing all along. His scream. It's the same inflection he uses for every single line. In fact, the vast majority of his lines in the first 13 or so episodes were screamed rather than spoke. It plays a pretty large part into why the show is hated so much. Over time, however, it seems he's actually grown further into the role. I'm not saying his acting is good. It's really not. I am saying, however, that his range has seemed to increase. No longer does he scream close to every single line, and the scream doesn't sound exactly the same every single time. That being said, he still needs a lot of work, and perhaps casting a more experienced actor would have been in their best interest. Pacing is another giant improvement over time. Early on, the show was taking the One Piece route and adapting only one chapter per episode. The problem with this is that this kind of pacing is excruciatingly slow. The standard pacing is actually 2 chapters per episode, which is what most shonen shows, or really most anime, do in general. 20 pages is not even close enough content to cover 22 minutes of scenes in the show. It actually means that they have to stretch these panels and just make them so much longer to fit within that span of time. That was pretty much the problem for the first half of the show or so. Thankfully, though, this has become a lesser issue over time. The show has accepted the 2 chapters per episode pacing, which has been standard forever, and now it's running okay. This means that we no longer have 10 episode long arcs that nothing happens in. I'm looking at you, intro arc to Black Clover. Progress feels like it's being made every episode now. Regardless of whether or not that's good progress, it's a totally different issue, but it still feels like it's being made, whereas to begin with, the show felt like everything was pointless. The biggest improvement for Black Clover over time, though, has definitely been the plot, or rather, actually specific elements of the plot. Black Clover has grown far more into its own narrative over time. It's no longer carbon copying Naruto and other similar shonen series. A much heavier emphasis is being put on betraying in the kingdom, rather than similating Naruto Part 1. I'm also happy to report that Yuno is not taking the Sasuke route and turning evil, thank God. Not having another edgelord in the show makes me especially happy, like holy. All this being said, this plot is still not perfect. It still feels bog standard for shonen, even if it's not really directly copying anything anymore. Plot and setting are clearly not that creative in the first place, and this actually weighs quite heavily on the overall story. Almost all the elements have been completely predictable throughout the entire story. For example, this one guy, I forget what his name is, but he has the red and the white hair and some buns, or maybe it's his helmet, I don't know. But I'm 99% sure that he is actually one of the main villains, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm pretty sure he's the traitor. I haven't read ahead in the manga, I'm just pretty sure it's true. However, these are just some of the problems that have been affecting the show since the beginning. Action still remains to be the show's weakest link, and that's really ironic because it is an action show. None of the fights have build up or hype beforehand at all. Even during the fight, they don't have build up or hype. Choreography and pacing of the fights are also extremely lacking. Even Yami versus Lit, which is probably the most hyped up fight in the entire series, he was even in the opening for a large period of time. That was an extremely disappointing fight in my opinion. Because it didn't have any kind of fun to it. It took so long for it to happen. Nothing felt natural. There's just talking between fight scenes. That's another problem with the fight. The fights don't happen in a chunk. They fight for 5 seconds, they talk for 2 minutes, they fight for 5 more seconds. That's the problem with all the fights in this show. It makes them feel very disjointed, and then the hype that you build from that emotional high, you know, it all drops when they talk. It gets a little less high every time until the end of the fight. You just don't care anymore. Our main cast hasn't fared very well either. Asta and Noah especially have very limited character development in my opinion. They don't even have that much depth for their time. 41 episodes and they still just are basically stereotypes. Asta's just your generic protagonist. He's happy, he's dumb, he's strong, he fights for what he believes in. Noelle's just your generic tsundere love interest. All she does is
I don't like this. Yeah, she's so stupid stuff. Baka stuff.
It's like it takes up so much screen time and it's not even funny. It's just an ongoing gag, and they're copy paste characters with nothing for you to root for. Also, he is really stupid in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's any kind of special ability. Yami literally explains how it works to Asta in front of Lich or whatever his name is, and the guy doesn't do it either. That's just dumb. It just doesn't make any sense inside the narrative. Just do it. Just use Ki against Asta. If he can do it, everyone can do it, right? He doesn't have magic. All of these things really pale in comparison to the largest issue the show has. Fact that My Hero Academia exists. This really hurts Black Clover more than anything. While Black Clover's intent on relying upon old shonen tropes, My Hero Academia is giving us something new, and in my opinion, one of the best shonen experiences out there as well. The action in My Hero Academia is unbeatable. I mean, some of the fights are just jaw-droppingly amazing, especially later on. Season 3, the fights are fantastic. Comparatively to Black Clover, there's nothing for these fights that come even close. Story's super engaging. It's not the most creative story in the world, but it works within its world and the characters are interesting. That's the next point. The characters have real development. You know, you care about them, you want to see them grow, and they have really epic scenes, and just the world in general is far more interesting. Superheroes aren't original. Superheroes in anime is not even that original. One Punch Man came out like a couple years before My Hero Academia, but the fact that it just works within its world, and it's like one of the very few superhero shows I've seen where most of society has superpowers and that it's working around that. I think it has made its own thing from superpowers, and it's so much more original and so much more creative than Black Clover, and it just works so much better in every way. It's just a far superior show in virtually every aspect. No matter what Black Clover tries to do, nothing seems like it's quite enough. When it's faced by its #1 competitor, it basically just flounders in every way. How has Black Clover improved? Yes, it has. It's gotten quite a bit better over time, even to the point now that I think the show is completely watchable in every way. But that does not mean it has gotten good. Far from it. Outside of guilty pleasure viewing, there's just way too many shonen series that have far superior quality to this one. I mean, there's Fullmetal Alchemist, there's Hunter x Hunter, there's, of course, My Hero Academia, even One Piece and Naruto, which I don't think are that great, have far more advantages and far better things about them than this show does. Unfortunately, with all the strides it's making, Black Clover seems to be doomed to live in infamy as the worst shonen of all time, and that's a really sad thing.